Story today is called The Four Doors, and it's a little bit of a long story, but it's a good story with a good lesson. So hang in there with me, and I think you'll be glad you did. As it came time for Jonathan's grandfather to die, he called his young grandson to his bedside. Jonathan, one day you will come to four doors in death. Only one leads to life. The other three empty into the pit. Think before you choose to walk through any of the doors. Pray before you act. But how will I know which is the right one and which is the wrong one? Jonathan asked, a tremor in his voice. You will know because the one that is hardest is the one that is easiest. The one that is smallest is actually the biggest. And the one that is most narrow is in truth the widest. When you walk in with your arms out and your head up, beware. Pray before you act. With that, the old man breathed his last. Jonathan wept as he kissed his beloved grandfather's face. Then he went out into the world to find his fortune. He was only 16 years old, and he figured the doors in death were many years away. Not long after setting out on the road, Jonathan met a man in worn clothing and a green hat. The man's hands were wrinkled and spotted. Deep lines creased his face. He looked as old as the moon. The man said, "Come, I will take you to the four doors in death." Already? Jonathan asked. Well, I have just begun my journey to gain my fortune. You gain your fortune by choosing a door, the old man replied. It is better to choose sooner than later. Better to find your love now than your pain later. Better to live longer and happier than shorter and sadder. Jonathan stared at the man for a minute, then said, You sound like my grandfather. The man smiled and said, Come now, let us travel together. They went down the road and soon came to a door. This is the first door in death, said the old man. Will you go in? Jonathan examined the door's fine iron surface. He tried to read the words around the emblem, a man seated in black robes, but the words were in a language he did not understand. Then the door opened with a creak that prickled the hair on Jonathan's neck. He didn't much like the looks of the door, but a door is a door, and since he had to choose sooner or later, he wanted to choose wisely. Other people walked up to the door and stood before it. Each person was presented with the same choice. Where does it go? Jonathan asked the old man. That you can only discover by entering. Jonathan gazed at the old man quizzically. But how do I choose? The old man placed his hand on Jonathan's shoulder. Perhaps the best way to choose a door is to look at the others who choose it. Sometimes that gives you an idea of where the door might lead. Jonathan listened to several of the people who stood at the door's entrance. The first was an old woman arguing with a young man. I tell you, she said, I demand my rights. I've lived in that house for years. You've no right to turn me out. I fixed the place up too and made it decent. Rent, shouted the blonde-haired man. I want the rent. Pay up or you'll not stay. Just give me time, screeched the old woman. No more time. We have to get what we need here. The man motioned to the door. We certainly shall, exclaimed the woman, walking through with her arms crossed over her chest. A second group of people raised their fists in anger. Tyrants, several shouted. They've taken our sons and used them for cannon fodder. The group pushed a man in chains who looked miserable and in pain. But at the last moment, he yelled, We'll see who is right. The judge will give everyone his due. And in they went. Jonathan turned to his friend. It appears to be some sort of court. That it is, said the old man. But what have I to bargain with or for? Nothing and everything, the old man answered. Jonathan stared at the open door. I don't think justice is what I want or need. Then we're off, said the old man, and he took long strides down the road to their right. Soon they came to a second door, made of wood and covered with silver, crafted in an intricate design. As Jonathan watched, the design changed when someone approached the door. One man, his head shaved, was dressed in yellow robes. He stood and gazed at the door. Instantly, the mirror-like design shimmered, and a vision of Shiva, the god of Hindus, danced on the surface. The monk ran inside, joyfully crying, "At last, I have found you, my love and my life." A woman with hard blue eyes and lips twisted with cynicism walked up to the door. Moments later, the words, "There is no God," appeared on its surface. "Just as I expected," the woman laughed and hurried inside. Then a young man walked up. This time the door reflected the same young man. "Well," he said, "you're a handsome lout." "I am you," said the image. "And you are me," said the young man. "Come inside, and we will be happy together," said the image. The young man smiled. I have finally found all that I sought." "I'd like to try this one," said Jonathan to the old man. "I don't want to go in yet, but I want to see what the image turns into." "Be my guest," said the old man, bowing and extending his hand in the direction of the door. Jonathan stepped up to the doorway. He had a picture in his mind of what he wanted to see, his grandfather's face. Instantly grinning at him was that very image. Jonathan cleared his mind and tried another picture. This time he thought of Santa Claus as he'd imagined the gift giver during his childhood. A moment later, Santa in red suit and black belt ho-ho-hoed onto the surface of the door. "Why, this is nothing more than a picture of what's in my own mind," Jonathan cried. The old man nodded. "But what is beyond?" The old man didn't answer. "I can't trust that," Jonathan said. "Why, my thoughts and feelings are as changeable as the wind." "Indeed," said the old man, "that is a clue." "You have a way of helping me think through my choices. Is that what you're supposed to do?" The old man smiled. "I am in that line, yes." Soon they came to a third door. A doorman actually stood there waiting for some people to come by. Jonathan had learned by this time to watch and wait. So he stood back and scrutinized the people who walk up to it. On the door were a number of posters, not unlike circus advertisements. One poster portrayed women in provocative attire. Another showed banquet-sized feasts. Another poster depicted men and women finding relief from boredom and loneliness through entertainment and alcohol. Vacations on the Riviera, winning millions in a lottery. Finally, one masterful piece read, "Be a king forever, your own country, your own subjects, all yours." "Now that is something," Jonathan said to the old man. "What do I do?" "Go ask the doorman," he answered. Jonathan stepped up to the grizzled man in the red coat. Before Jonathan could ask him anything, the doorman pressed a slip of paper into his hand. "Just sign on the dotted line," the doorman augustly said. At the top of the paper were the words, "My soul in exchange for the world." People strained to reach the door behind him, and when Jonathan refused to take the paper, a young woman snatched it out of his hand. "You want to be stupid about it? Go ahead. My soul ain't so valuable." Many signed the paper without even reading it. Their eyes were fixed on the colorful posters. What surprised Jonathan the most was that each person signed with his fingertip after the doorman pricked it with a knife. Jonathan hesitated in front of the tantalizing pictures. Finally, he said, "I'm ready. This is what I want." The old man grabbed Jonathan's hand. "Come, you don't want this." But the doorman stepped between Jonathan and the old man. "You have no right to do this. Let him go." Urgently, the old man tugged on Jonathan's hand. "Only one door leads to life, my son." Jonathan hesitated, but nodded his head with sudden agreement. "Thank you. Let's go on to the fourth door." And what kind of door do you expect to find, my son? Asked the old man. I have no idea, answered Jonathan. Grandfather said only that it would be small, rough, and narrow. Do you think I have treated you roughly? Asked the old man. Jonathan eyed him up and down. Forcefully, yes, but in a good way. Do you think my ideas are small? Those who have argued with you seem to think they're small, but I don't. I kind of like them. In fact, I think they're the grandest ones of all. Do you think I'm narrow? Jonathan was astounded at this line of questioning, but he answered, in some ways, I suppose you are. You do not allow ambiguity in what you say. You stand on the side of truth. Would you trust me then? Asked the old man kindly. Jonathan looked at him. For the first time, he noticed the scars around his temples and on his cheeks. And his hands, twisted with age, were also covered with scars. As Jonathan gazed up into the old man's eyes, suddenly he didn't appear old anymore. He looked like a king. Then the image passed and he was just an old man. Do you trust me? He asked Jonathan again. Yes, I trust you, Jonathan replied. Instantly, the old man changed. He was as tall as a mountain and as small as a flea all at the same time. He was rough as rock and smooth as cream. He was narrow as a hair and wide as the widest road. He said, I am the door. Jonathan dropped his jaw and stared. Then he realized that this man was the one whom he had been seeking. He fell at the old man's feet and worshiped. When he looked up, the man was gone. But I haven't gone through the door, Jonathan cried. A voice in his heart said, indeed you have, and now I am in you. I will be with you always. Just call, and I will answer. Then Jonathan said, the whole world is mine. Indeed, said the voice, and all of heaven too. And one more thing. What is that? Jonathan asked. Myself. Jonathan smiled. Then let's get on with it. I'm looking forward to traveling together. So am I, said the voice. Jonathan looked around, then scratched his head. One more question. Why are you the fourth door in death? Because it is through death that we find life. With that, Jonathan took a first step into his new world.